di prima. Mettiamo
Poi
questo.
bisogna fissare le altre per mi pare. Ne abbiamo una.
So good afternoon, Mark, or good morning for you. If I understand correctly, you are still in the morning in Canada. So thank you very much on behalf of Ricardo, Rosa, and myself, and all the people in the audience for giving time and your commitment to this contribution for Graziani Conference, in memory, this conference in memory of Graziani. So one question we have asked to several international speakers is, it's a simple one. How do you first meet Augusto Graziani and how you came across his writings?
Okay, well, the first time I saw or met Augusto Graziani was at the famous Trieste summer school, and that was in 1984. And so Graziani was giving a lecture, and I was quite surprised and shocked in the sense that Graziani was describing the monetary theory of production in a way which was very similar to the one that I had seen Alain Parguez describe it. So to me, it was reassuring in the sense that, you know, this circuitous view is quite original. And so one may sort of wonders, well, is it some kind of crazy idea, or is it a reasonable one? And so it was very good for me to see that two scholars independently had come to the same description of how the capitalist economy was functioning. After that, I saw Graziani, but not that often. You know, one of them was at in Benevento, and I'm sure I saw him in 1990 because we were both on the International Advisory Board of Économie Appliquée, this French journal. But the one time I remember very well was in 2001. There was a conference in Berlin, and Graziani was there. And at some point after the presentation of Graziani, Basil Moore, who was also there, started complaining, saying, well, I'm tired of all these Italians pronouncing the word Keynesian instead of saying Keynesian. So the next day, Jan Kregel told Basil Moore, you've been very rude. And I should tell you, Basil, that you keep saying savings, which is supposed to be a stock, whereas you should be saying the saving, saving and investment, and not savings and investment. Yeah. And the second part of your question was with regards, what's the first paper or whatever that I saw from Graziani, and I think it was around 1984 or 85, and it was his paper that was published on the finance motive in the economic notes of the Monte dei Paschi di Siena. And that paper, in fact, was a paper that had been sent by Graziani to Alain Parguez, because I have a photocopy of it, and there is his little signature and saying, you know, in honor of Alain Parguez. And so I photocopied the copy that Alain Parguez had. And yeah, that was an important paper for me.
Thank you very much, Mark. If I may, it's a bit a difficult question. You don't have to answer. You mentioned Alain Parguez, and I can say that Graziani had a lot of respect for Alain as a scholar, as a friend. And of course, suddenly, Alain is not anymore with us, so I cannot ask the question directly to Alain. But you are being very close to Alain Parguez. I was wondering, are you aware of sort of, you know, their relationship, academic relationship, how sort of they interact, on the, you know, in light of what you were saying, that in a sense, at the time when you first came across Graziani, there weren't many international scholars that were aware of this monetary circuit theory. As you said, maybe it was a mad idea, but here we have two great scholars. Are you aware, Alan has ever told you that they were communicating between themselves in a sense to develop these ideas?
Well, no, I really think that they developed their views totally independently. But once because Alain Pargues was also at the Trieste Summer School in 1984. So once they started to know each other, then Graziani published several papers in the journal that Alain Pargues was editing, which was called Économie et Société. So from 1984 on, he must have published 3 or 4 papers in that series, including the famous one which was also in the Greenwich, well, what was it called before?
The International Papers of Political Economy edited by Arestis and Sawyer.
Yes, well, no, that was before, even before that. It was, I forget it was at the time, it was still a Polytechnique.
Yes.
Where Greenwich was still a Thames Papers.
Yeah, Thames Papers, yes. So my pronunciation again was wrong. It's Thames Papers, yes, that one.
So Graziani published his summary or synthesis of the monetary circuit in 1989, but there was another version almost identical that was published by in that series, Économie et Société, in 1990.
Was it in French or in English, that version?
They were both in English.
Okay, yeah.
Were both in English. And so they knew each other very well. And then one anecdote I may tell is that Alain Pargues in 1996 decided for some reason that he didn't want to run this series of journals anymore. And a lot of us wrote to Alain saying, no, you have to change your mind and keep on going with the series. But Augusto Graziani did something more. He took the plane all the way to Paris, meeting Alain Pargues and trying to convince him to change his mind. So, you can see Augusto, was very dedicated to the cause, so to speak, but it was to no avail in the end. The series disappeared in 1996.
Okay, wow, this is really very, very interesting. Thank you, Mark, for sharing this with us. One way, when you were talking, I was thinking here with Rosa is, do you think Graziani ideas and writings have made an impact, and a significant impact on the way you developed then your economic analysis of modern economies? I mean, I remember, in many of your papers there is reference to Graziani, but do you think there is any particular contribution of Graziani or idea of Graziani that you think really was important, the way you went to develop your own analysis?
Well, I think to some small extent, it was a reciprocal influence. I mean, I was much younger than Graziani, and I was not known at all at the time. But if you read some of the papers that Graziani, like the one I mentioned, of the Thames Papers of 1989, he cites 3 previous papers of mine on this topic. But still, I think the big advantage of Graziani is that he was writing very clearly. And so that paper that I mentioned, the Economic Notes of 1984 on the finance motive, was very influential on me. As you know, in that time period, late 70s, early 1980s, there was a big debate on the significance of Keynes' finance motive. And that paper, cleared up my own views about how we should be thinking about that. And two major reasons. In that paper, you find the distinction between initial finance and final finance, which has played quite an important role later. And there was a second one, but I forget what it was. Sorry, but there was a second key notion also. And
Is it
I
the
made...
distinction between financing the production and financing investment?
Oh yeah, I remember exactly. That's exactly it. And I fully agreed with the way Graziani put the emphasis on product. You know, it's the whole production that needed to be financed, not just investment. And I published a paper in 1986, which was published in Recherche économique de Louvain, which nobody has read because it was published in French. But yeah, that paper was highly influenced by this view of the finance motive by Graziani. And also in my I published a paper that was translated into Italian by Riccardo Bellofiore in the review Metamorphosis.
Mm-hmm.
And there also these views that Graziani had put forward in he had two papers, in fact, on the finance motive, you know, made me understand better what Alain Parguez was saying.
Thank you very much, Mark. You're really certainly giving us some wonderful and new ideas that you know I'm sure the audience will really enjoy to hear. Fast forward. You are considered, I hope you forgive me for saying that, you are considered together with Win Godley, again, a great scholar and someone that Graziani, I know, admired and respected as a scholar, but also as a person. You are considered, together with Godley, the father of the so-called stock flow consistent models or approach. So one thing that it naturally came to mind is Godley wrote this famous paper in the CJE, where actually he did highlight the link between his way of thinking modern monetary economies and Graziani way of thinking on monetary economies. So one question is, for you would be, do you agree with Godley, and how do you see the monetary circuit and the stock flow developed in the near future? Do you think there is a chance we could beat an economics on the shoulder of Graziani and Godley and yourself, of course?
Okay. Well, your image is stuck now. I don't know if...
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, okay, first I should say that Godley had very similar ideas than those of Graziani before they met. Because if you read the book by Godley and Cripps, published in 1983, you have some of the major features of circuit theory, in the sense that, you know, like production takes time. Initial finance or finance of production is very important. And what else? And the banking system, the banks play a very important role with the credit to the firms. So and also, so the two of them, Graziani and Godley, they got along very well. You know, Gennaro Zezza told me that they met together for the first time in 1988, and they immediately they got along very well, presumably because they were also of the same generation. So and I got along very well also with Win Godley for that reason, because we had a kind of similar idea on this monetary circuit. And I tried to explain that in the Journal of Post-Keynesian Economics in a paper that was published in 2021. So yes. On the other hand, I would say that if I can be frank here, I would say that when Graziani or Alain Parguez or their followers were trying to formalize this monetary circuit, it was not adequate, or at least not as adequate as it can be with the SFC approach. So, and you know, people like Marco Passarella are using now the stock flow consistent approach to develop these ideas of the monetary circuit. But I think it's much better to do it within the SFC approach than the way that it was done in the past, even by Augusto Graziani himself. There was an interesting paper that Godley wrote for the other Festschrift that was organized by Richard Arena and who was the second one?
Neri Salvadori.
Neri Salvadori, where he has a little 25 equation model where he summarizes in his view what is the view of Graziani, and I think it's a very neat summary. One thing I should say though is that well, the SFC approach to some extent is built on previous work by James Tobin. Mm-hmm. But Tobin had a particular view, you know, he had a kind of portfolio view of the role of money. And it's interesting to see that both Wynne Godley and Augusto Graziani were very good in underlining the weakness or the weaknesses of this Tobin approach to the portfolio view of money. And in fact, if you read the 2003 book that was published in English of Graziani, he has a section where he's criticizing Tobin, and he puts his finger right on the proper weakness of the Tobin's approach.
Thank you very much, Mark. We are approaching the end of this interview. So I was wondering if there is anything that we didn't discuss and then you would like to share with us and all the audience at the conference.
Well, nothing really that comes to my mind. So, yeah, I think those were three very good questions that you asked.
Oh, thank you very much, Mark. And thank you very much on behalf of Riccardo Alfonso, Rosa Canelli, and myself, and all the audience to find the time. You know, we know how busy you are, to find time to offer your contribution to this conference in memory of Graziani. In the audience, there will be a lot of friends and colleagues and family members, and I'm sure they will just love to hear what you just said. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Well, I'm not busy anymore, so it's my pleasure to do this interview for you and Augusto Graziani and his family.
Thank you very much.